listening to The Intellectual Network at theintellectual.com. And now, The Intellectual Podcast. Melissa Cutler, thank you for joining us on The Intellectual Podcast.
You're welcome. It's nice to be here.
You're our first author.
Oh my gosh.
To come on the show. And you're a San Diego resident, so you're also a local person, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. I moved down here for college and fell in love with it and never left.
Yeah, where did you go to college?
I went to college at SDSU, got my English degree, met my husband, and the rest is history.
Nice. And where did you come from before that?
Well, not that far away, Orange County.
Wow, it's a world of difference, Orange County and San Diego.
It's a really big difference, and I love it down here. I cannot imagine leaving.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I got family back east in Indiana and in Oklahoma, and you try to explain to them how different it is from San Diego to Orange County to Los Angeles to Ventura, and they just don't get it. It's all Southern California to them. Exactly.
But it's just there's no comparing.
So you write romance novels with a cowboy bent.
Sometimes. I also write romantic suspense, but I mostly like writing blue-collar heroes, everyday people, that kind of thing. But I write a lot of different kinds of romance. Mm-hmm.
Well, you sent me a copy of Cowboy Justice to read.
Correct.
And as I was telling you before we started the interview, I haven't been able to read the whole book. I've gotten a couple of chapters in. You've got a very descriptive writing style that I enjoy quite a bit. And actually, the location for this book is outside of Tucumcari, New Mexico, correct?
Correct.
And I've spent a lot of time in New Mexico. I'm working on a screenplay that takes place on Navajo Nation. And I've spent a whole bunch of time in northern New Mexico and a bunch of time in southern New Mexico as well. My dad and my sister and I like to travel national parks. Awesome. And so we've done a lot of that. But reading your story, and you're describing the canyons where Rachel's riding her horse, and it was so vivid.
Thank you.
I was right there with her. It was amazing.
That's good. I really love that section of the country, and I have a deep affinity for deserts. Mm-hmm. I'm a desert lover, so that was a natural fit for me.
Yeah, the desert, especially like late in the day, just pre-sunset when the sun's getting golden and all the colors of the mesas and stuff can come out. It is unbelievably beautiful there.
It is.
So
I love it.
What got you started writing novels? Because that's a particular writing style. Yeah,
it's been interesting. I think I was born a writer, but I wasn't sure what kind. I know that by the time I was 4 years old, I thought I wanted to be a journalist when I was an adult. Mm-hmm. When I was 10, I asked Santa for a thesaurus for Christmas, and I always just kind of had it in me, but I wasn't sure what. And I got my English degree because I'm practical like that, and became a high school English teacher. And my love for fiction just kept growing and growing. And I always knew I was going to write a novel someday, but I was kind of waiting for the perfect idea to come from above, Yeah, rain down on me like unicorn glitter.
The infamous, I'll do it when it hits me.
Yeah, there's time. I'll do it when it hits me. I just have to wait for the perfect American novel idea to come at me. Mm-hmm. And then 8 years ago, randomly in the middle of the night, I had a grand mal seizure in my sleep.
Wow.
And it woke my husband up. I was unconscious, and the paramedics came, and I roused after they got some oxygen on me. And within 4 hours, we were being told I had a brain tumor. And they didn't think it was malignant. It didn't show signs of that in the MRIs, but they wouldn't know until they got it out of there.
Right.
And it was vascular and bleeding into my brain. So I had the surgery. I had an open brain surgery, and they removed it and found out that it wasn't cancerous. But in those 2 weeks between the diagnosis and being told it wasn't cancerous, I was kind of like You know, Melissa, you're such a dummy. You had one thing on your bucket list, to write the novel. You're so stupid. Like, you always wanted to, and you were waiting for the perfect idea, and it never came to you, and now you might die. And I felt it was really quite the epiphany. I mean, really. So after about a year, I was all healed up again, and my kids were getting a little bit older. They were babies when that happened. And so I had a little bit of free time once they started preschool, and I thought, you know, I'm just going to make it happen, even without the perfect idea. So I wrote that first book, and it wasn't the best idea, but about halfway through, I realized this is what I want to do every day for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And I remember it was late at night, because that's when I was writing. I remember I went in and I woke my husband up, and I said, I am going to be a writer. And he was like, whatever. And I said, no, you don't understand. A romance writer. Because I had no desire for sad endings anymore. After the brain tumor experience, I only wanted happy endings. And that's the one thing that romance readers are guaranteed when they read a book, is that it will have a happy ending. Oh,
that's fascinating.
That's my story.
That is fascinating, because I was wondering why the romance novel, like why that direction, and that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
I have all these memories of I lost my driver's license during the tumor thing, you know, for medical reasons, because if you have a big seizure like that, they suspend your license. And I used to stroll my kids to the library, and while they were playing at story time, I could reach the only section I could get to and still keep an eye on my kids was the paperback romance section. And I started just reading, and I realized that I just don't have the heart for sad endings anymore. So that's why romance.
That is so cool. That is, I'm seriously, that's amazing.
Thank you.
You mentioned your kids were really small when the brain tumor hit. I mean, there must have been some part of you too that was figuring, like, whatever you did from here out, you needed to leave the legacy for them, to see that it's important to go after the dream, right?
Yes, and it's really cool that you brought that up, because that really did occur to me that, you know, if you have a job that you're not happy with, or you're just kind of living, but you're not, you know, going out there and doing what you need to do to make yourself happy, and to fulfill your dreams, and you're not really, really living. And so in the years that followed that, you know, when I started writing full time, you know, every moment I got, what kept me from feeling guilty for not spending quite as much time with my kids or for putting myself first was that I was setting an example of this is what it looks like when you make a goal for yourself, a really hard goal, because like 1% of 1% of people who set out to write a book ever actually become published. Like, this is what it looks like and how hard you have to work and how dedicated you have to be to make your dreams come true. And it's worth it.
Yeah, that's a struggle that we go with here. Everybody who's associated with the Intellectual Network, for the most part, are artists, and you know, a lot of them have families. And I know the girls, Laura and JJ and Teresa, here at the network, they're always struggling with that, the balance between, you know, being responsible and taking care of the family, but also doing these big pursuits and pursuing the larger dreams of acting or building this network or doing anything else. 'Cause this stuff takes time, and it's a struggle. And it doesn't make the daily life easy necessarily.
No, and it's so easy to marginalize art as not a worthy occupation or something that you have to, you know, you're not supposed to want to try to get money for it, or, you know, but you have to make a living. And it's such a balance between art and making a living and really owning your dreams, you know. There are a lot of people that look down on romance authors in the romance community as, you know, kind of being a lesser art, but I just freaking own it.
Well,
whatever.
It's funny because it's consumed so heavily.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's commercially, it's probably one of the most successful forms of writing that you can have.
It is. It is the most successful. Over 50% of books sold in the United States of romance novels.
That's why they don't like it. Because you're able to make money doing your art. And I experience this all the time. You get it in the film business too, Well, unless you're an indie and you're making art house films and nobody's watching it and you're not making any money, you're not really making any art. It's like, really?
Yes. Yes. I think anyone engaged in commercial art, commercially viable art, really, you struggle with that and with the identity as an artist, but I think also the romance novel is primarily written by women for women, and I think that makes a lot of people nervous too.
Yeah, that's that's kind of interesting. I got two younger sisters, so I'm a little more up on women's issues than some guys.
Yeah.
I helped raise my sisters after my parents got divorced. But yeah, it does seem to always be kind of a struggle with powerful women or women with power. People seem to be a little shy of them.
Yes.
Threatened by them even. Yes.
Yeah. I think that can be true for any marginalized group, women, gays, just when power is gotten and when the smart people reach up for more that they deserve. I think that's threatening for some people. Mm-hmm. But it's a wonderful industry, and the people in this industry, the men and women in the romance community, it's a wonderful group. Really supportive, really, really positive people.
Well, I have to confess, I've never read a romance novel before, and I started reading yours last night. And the first chapter really surprised me. Because you've got Rachel pinned down in this canyon.
Yeah.
And she's just trying to protect her land from a bunch of ruffians.
Yeah.
And the way she handled herself and how strong she was through that moment, I found myself reading it going, yeah, go kick the teeth out of those guys.
Good.
And I was really surprised because, very first chapter, I was invested in what she was going to be facing. And I was very surprised. Pleasantly so, very surprised, that I was as into it in the very first chapter as I was. And, I'm definitely going to end up reading this whole book. I can tell you that right now.
Oh, I hope so. I hope you enjoy it just as much. Your first romance novel, that's a lot of pressure.
Well, it's off to a good start. I'm through the second chapter now, and, all the stuff going on in the hospital and whatnot.
Oh, it's so dramatic. Huh?
And I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the hell out of it, actually. So
good. Good.
Now, the romance novel industry, you guys have conventions and everything too, right? Just like all the sci-fi geeks.
We do. We have our biggest convention is through our professional organization, which is called the Romance Writers of America, which is referred to as RWA. And that professional association has 10,000 members, all in various stages of their publishing career, from people who are just interested in writing a romance novel to people who've been published for 40 years. And we all get together once a year, swapping coasts. And this year it'll be in San Antonio in July. And it's a really wonderful chance to network and to take workshops and because we're all really entrepreneurs, like artist entrepreneurs, which I know is something that you are too. Mm-hmm. And it's a great meeting of the minds. That's
fantastic. San Antonio's a great town.
I have not been there. I can't wait.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. You're gonna end up writing a book about it.
I bet you I will.
Downtown, the Riverwalk and the Alamo. It's just I spent 3 years living in Texas. I went to college at Baylor. And unfortunately, I never made it to San Antonio until much later after I'd left Texas and come back to California. But I ended up hitting San Antonio on a couple different occasions on jobs that I was working. And so I've got to spend probably about a month's worth of time there. And I just love it. I love San Antonio. The vibe is really cool. It's it's not like Dallas. Like Dallas is big and crazy, and Fort Worth is kind of, the old ranch town. But San Antonio just has its own whole different feel from the rest of Texas.
I look forward to that. That'll be fun.
Yeah, it's a nice place, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful area. Not as flat as some of the rest of Texas. It's got these like gentle rolling hills.
Yeah, I was looking at the topography. That's something that interests me. With like the land, what the land looks like, which I think you got from reading the first chapter of my book. I'm always interested in the land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're gonna love San Antonio.
Cool. I wanted to, I had one more comment about the RWA, if you don't mind. Since we're a local San Diego podcast, so I wanted to talk about the San Diego chapter of the RWA, which is 130 members strong.
Wow.
Yeah. So in San Diego County, the RWA chapter, for which I'm the president this year, we have 130 members, a lot of published authors and a lot of people just getting started. And we meet every month, and it's a wonderful place for authors and writers to get together and discuss craft and business. And I was surprised when I joined. I'd never met a published author before when I joined after my brain tumor. And it was just amazing to find out how many local San Diego romance authors there are. There are a lot. A lot of published authors, just in my own neighborhood even.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So where can we send people to get more information about that? Is there a website?
There is. I'm glad you asked. rwasd.com.
Okay, rwasd.com, and we'll be sure to put that in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
For anybody who knows, there was a link, but I don't remember what it is. It'll be on our show page, so check it out. So after the brain tumor, you decide you're going to write, and obviously anybody going forward now, I'm going to tell them, go to the RWA website and you can find resources to help you move forward. How did you move forward? Because my dad was a writer. At heart. He ended up going into journalism, and then Vietnam happened and he became a nuclear engineer. Go figure.
Oh my gosh.
And it wasn't until much, much later in his life, I convinced him to actually go take a screenwriting course with me, and he got back into writing the last few years of his life.
That's cool.
But I know he always wanted to write that great American novel. And he kind of quietly in the background always was writing stuff. And never got to the novel part, but I think partly because he just didn't know where to start.
Yeah.
Like, what is your suggestion to people who are looking to get started?
I think, my first suggestion, besides joining RWA if you write anything romantic, would be to get through to the end of that first book. Very few people who set out to write a novel ever get to the end, and it's a way different feeling to get to the end of a book than it is to start a book. And the insight, it will be invaluable. And to not worry about if it's a publishable book or not, because it's more like a learning novel, a practice. Most people's first books do not get published. And when you hear about it, those are absolutely outliers. Not liars, but outliers, because it really is a learning experience to kind of go through the motions of it the first time, the way you would with any new career.
Right.
And so my first piece of advice would be to finish the first book. My first book took me 18 months to write.
Wow.
And it was tough. You're doing everything for the first time. And then my next piece of advice once you finish the first book is to immediately start a new book. And you'll just be impressed by how much easier it is the second time around. It's way different. Have you written more than one screenplay?
Yeah, I've written a whole bunch of short plays and produced most of what I've written. Again, I don't know. I want everybody to watch everything I've ever made.
Sure. Yeah.
It's definitely getting better as I go along. But
exactly.
It's a process. Art is a process. You got to practice and practice and keep at it. It's just like a sport. Yes,
exactly. So that would be my number one piece of advice. A lot of people, they think they're halfway through and they've got a brilliant idea and they want to sell it to an agent, or get an agent or an editor interested. You got to finish it. You got to get all the way through the process once at least.
Mm-hmm. And, well, it's like writers for television. I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I got a great idea for a TV show." It's like, okay, well, write your pilot and then write 3 episodes. Then you can go take it to a network and try and sell it. They won't even touch you if you don't have your first like 3 or 4 episodes written past the pilot.
Yeah. And when I finished my first book, I didn't really realize how bad it was. And I tried very hard to get an agent. Mm-hmm. And after about 40 rejections, it occurred to me that perhaps it isn't the best book and maybe I should just write another one. And I did end up publishing that second one. And all of those thereafter. But it was a good experience to get rejected so many times.
Well, here's an interesting question for you, because I experience this all the time. I imagine you had your loved ones and your friends read your book, right?
I did, yes.
And did they all blow smoke up your ass?
Most of them, yes.
Yeah.
I think, at that point I was a few years, only probably 3 years away from, almost dying. Everything I wrote was like golden to them, right?
Right. She's writing. She can write. Yay. She
can. She's alive. She can write. Yeah. So,
well, it's my experience. You don't have to have a brain tumor for your friends and family to be gun shy about telling you what they really feel.
Yes, that is true.
I have to give credit to my cousin Eric. He's the one guy. I was about 8 short films in, and I'm like, so what do you think? And he's like, well, honestly, watching your short films is like watching porn, but fast forwarding through the sex.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, oh, I got to work on the writing.
Good for cousin Eric. Telling it like it is.
Yeah, he's laughing in the background. He heard that. But it was the first like really brutally honest review I'd gotten from anybody close to me. And it really hit home. And I was like, oh, damn you for saying that. But thank you for saying that.
Yeah, there were several benevolent agents who didn't just write form letter rejections to me, but actually clued me in on what the big problems were in the book I'd written. And I will be forever grateful for them to take the time, especially the more I know now about the industry and how inundated agents are with queries and submissions. For them to take the time to personally let me know what I needed to work on was huge.
Well, and it's my experience in my realm that it's rare to find people who are willing to kind of mentor you a little bit.
That is correct.
So anytime you come across someone who does, it's a special moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I like what Ira Glass said in his American Life series. He did an interview about this gap between, for artists, between when you just get started and you know what excellence is, but then you're not there. And bridging that gap between being what you know is making what you know is excellent art and actually being able to make that excellent art is a really tough.
Oh, I lost her. Did I lose you? We lost Melissa. I'm going to have to call her back here.
David, is that you?
Yes, it is.
Phone died. I don't know what that was. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
I'm sorry about that. I don't know what happened there.
It happens. It's technology. You were right in the middle of saying some very interesting stuff.
Was I? Okay, let me think about what I was saying.
You were I think Ira Glass you were talking about. And it's one thing to know what good art is. It's another thing to get to where you can make it. Exactly.
And that's actually a really, it was really eye-opening to listen to his interview, which you can find on YouTube. But yeah, when you're starting out, you know what good, like for a musician, you know what great music sounds like. You've consumed it as a listener and you're an artist, so you have that sensibility. But being able to actually create it yourself there's a huge learning that has to go on, a huge hill to climb before you can actually make good art. And it's important to remember to be patient, which was Ira Glass's point.
Patience is my weak point, especially when it comes to writing. I have the hardest time writing screenplays.
I've never written a screenplay, but I've heard there's a lot of similarities between screenplays and novels.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about screenplays is primarily it's dialogue driven, and you don't do a lot of description. And I find with novels, oftentimes it's a lot more description and a lot less dialogue. So it's a little different, but the structure of screenplays drives me batty.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It just slows the process of writing down. And I think faster than I can write, and I type really fast, but I think faster than I can put the thoughts down onto the computer, and I end up getting so far ahead of myself in my brain that it frustrates me to the point where I just I walk away from it. I'm like, I can't do this. Oh,
That's hard. Yeah. The patience of getting it out of your brain is really hard.
Yeah.
Experience myself.
What is your writing process like? I mean, do you have a quiet office that you write in? Do you get away?
It's a messy process. And the more I've learned to embrace the ever-evolving messiness of it all, the better off I am and the more confident I am. I have a desk, but I've moved it around my house, trying to find the best place for it. The quiet office didn't work. The right in the middle of everything didn't work, but I finally found something that was pretty close to everything on my lower level, to where I was still kind of in the middle of everything, but could focus without looking at the dirty dishes in the kitchen or something. And I kind of write it stream of consciousness the first time through. And if there's something I feel like skipping, I skip it. Mm-hmm. And I write out of order, and it is extremely messy. And my rough drafts, when I'm finished with them, they're just deplorable. I mean, it's just awful. And then I go through, and then you really sit down and start making it good. And I love the entire process. I love the messiness. I love revising. I love everything.
Well, maybe that's my problem, being a director first and a writer second. I want my screenplays to be what I'm ready to shoot, you know?
Yeah, and you need to work on that patience there. But I think that it's really important for writers or for anybody who's engaging in any kind of creative process to kind of embrace the way their brain needs to do it. Mm-hmm. And I know some people that just go through and write all the dialogue first and then go back and write description. Hey, there's no problem with that, you know. And then I know some people, they have to write it all through linearly, exactly as it needs to appear in the end.
Right.
Everybody's different.
Yeah, I know when my dad wrote his screenplay, which I hope someday I get the chance to make, he just kind of bounced around. He's like, I got an idea for this scene. I got an idea for this scene. And he just started writing various scenes that, you know, really were anywhere in the movie, you know, as it hit. And he had maybe 30% of his screenplay done. And then he just sat down one night and wrote the remaining 60 pages in a night.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that happens a lot.
I was like, wow.
I will tell you, before I start writing, before I even get the first words on the page, I have to deeply understand the main characters. In romance novels, there's always two main characters. I have to deeply understand both of them, what their greatest fears are, and how I want to access those greatest fears throughout the course of the book. So I kind of already know how it's going to end, because I know that I'm going to access those greatest fears, and this is how, and this will be the result. But other than that, I don't really know what's going to happen during a book.
That's interesting. I guess that's true. Any romance novel would be two main characters, huh?
Yes. And some romance novels, especially new adults, which is a kind of an emerging genre, are written in first-person point of view from one person's perspective, and so that's really only one main character. When you write third-person point of view, you have two main characters. What
method do you prefer?
Third person, yeah, I do. I've actually never written in first person before. I really like being able to get in both the hero and the heroine's head and see what they're thinking. Yeah,
well, I think for me, just reading the novels that I have read, not the romance novels, but just, you know, sci-fi and everything else. I like third person better than first person.
Yeah, primarily, it's interesting because many novels that are specifically written for kids or teenagers especially, or new adults, are written in first person because during those ages, people are really looking inward at themselves and their own journeys and who they are, and trying to come to terms with who they are and identify more closely with first person point of view narratives in a lot of cases.
Right.
And as you get older, that becomes less significant as opposed to who you are in relation to the people around you.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have even thought about that.
Yeah. So
the writing style is gauged towards the type of reader you've got.
Yeah, a lot of times. Not always, but a lot of times, yeah.
That's fascinating.
So into a Barnes & Noble or into your Target section and find new adult or young adult novels, there's a really good chance they're going to be in first person. And that's just the rule. I mean, there's a lot of exceptions to the rule, but that's a pretty good rule to go by.
Yeah, it makes sense, though, now that you're talking about it. So where do you get your inspiration for your stories?
That is a question I'm asked a lot, and I never have a good answer for it because it's kind of everywhere. Like for Cowboy Justice, those characters appeared in another book first. So, they appeared as secondary characters. And so I just tried to create interesting people with little bits and pieces of everybody I've ever met and my own warped psyche. Usually the idea for a new series or a new book starts with a single seed of an idea. I have a book coming up this summer in August called Risky Business that's about a men's league ice hockey team made up of combat wounded veterans. And it's kind of a complicated concept, but that idea came about because I read a travel article about the Erie Canal, and I decided I really wanted to write a book set on the Erie Canal. And at the same time, I was following along with a male model who was a combat wounded vet missing one of his legs and is now a male model. And his name is Alex Minsky. And I was following his story, and I decided I wanted to write a series about combat wounded veterans and their lives, their very good lives, even those who had been severely wounded or amputees. And so all the ideas kind of came together, and I added some romance, and I'm really pleased with the results.
Wow. That
there
is,
you go.
Yeah, I want to read that one.
Yeah. I can't wait. It's really exciting. The hero of the first book ended up being a man who had suffered a traumatic brain injury and lost the ability to read or write. Huh. Because that happens a lot. That's one of the most common combat wounds, traumatic brain injury. So, I just looking at my environment around me for inspiration. I read the newspaper still because there's a lot of human interest stories in the newspaper.
The newspaper? What's that?
I know. My mom gets it. She passes it along to me.
Oh, okay. So you're not the one person subscribed to the UT.
No. I read the LA Times. I read every week's travel section, and I skim it anyway, because a lot of times the setting is what comes to me first.
Yeah. Yeah. That's often for me how my films kind of come out, as the setting comes first. Yeah.
It was that way for me with Cowboy Justice. That series taking place in New Mexico. I just think New Mexico is fascinating. And when I set out to write a Western, nothing against Texas or anything, but I liked the intersection of all the different people and groups in New Mexico, and the little flair of kind of artistic uniqueness and individuality that seems present in New Mexico.
Yeah, New Mexico and even the northern parts of Arizona, for me, are what I think of when I think of the West. Yeah. The old West. I don't really think of Texas very much, outside of the Alamo. It's like, it's kind of funny. Texas is just a whole bunch of ranches.
Yeah, I haven't spent all that much time in Texas, but I'm really looking forward to it. But I love New Mexico, and I do like Arizona, and think it's a beautiful place. The follow-up to Cowboy Justice features a Jewish cowboy hero, and I was inspired for that by an article I was reading in the travel section about an installation at a New Mexico museum about Jewish settlers in the 1800s. And I was extremely intrigued by the idea of all these families of Jews coming from the East Coast to settle in the West and become ranchers.
Yeah, because the experience changes everything about you.
Yeah.
In so many ways. I think that'll be an interesting thing to write.
Yeah, it was. It was wonderful. It was great, and I really learned a lot about Jewish history in New Mexico while writing this Western, which was fantastic.
That's cool. That's cool. So do you spend a lot of time in New Mexico?
No, I've only been there a few times, and really enjoyed it there. But I have books. I've written 13 books, and they're set all over. Last year alone, I released books that were set in, let me think here, Panama, New Mexico, and Wyoming. And this year I have books coming out that take place in New Mexico, New York, the Erie Canal book, San Diego, and let me see. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. That's all the different locations this year.
You're kind of a writing machine now. So it took you 18 months to do your first book. How long is it taking you on average now to complete a novel?
2 to 3 months.
That's fast.
Yeah. I love it. I have so many stories in my head that need to get out.
That's fantastic. And what year was it you started doing the writing?
That I started? Let's see. That would be in 2010.
So you've been at it about 4 years?
No, maybe that's not right. 2009. I've been at it about 5 years, and my first book was released a year and a half ago.
Wow. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, and in my first year, I had 2 books come out, and that was in 2012. And last year I had 3 releases, and this year I have 6.
That's fantastic. It'll just be a mere matter of time before Hollywood starts trying to gobble you up, right?
Oh, I don't know about that, but I certainly am blessed to make a living doing my passion.
Here's a question. If Hollywood was to come, would you want to write your own screenplay from your books, or would you be okay with somebody else adapting it?
I'd like to think I'd be okay with somebody else adapting it. I think that would just be such an honor and a privilege that doesn't happen to many people. And to hopefully drive more people to my books would be enough. I understand that I'm in a commercial industry, and I think I'd like to imagine that I'd be okay with somebody else adapting it.
It's funny because, and I don't know how attached you are to your books after you write them, but so many of my artist friends, anything we create, it's like our child, we can't imagine it in somebody else's hands.
Yeah, that's true to a certain extent, but there's a point where you kind of do have to let go, because especially when the book is published, it becomes almost a property of the readers, for them to interpret however they want. Your words are done, and it's kind of just out there, separate. So it's not really my baby anymore. I don't really think of it as. I'm extremely proud of everything I've done, but I give it up to the readers and let them do with it what they must.
So on a personal level, what books do you like to read? Who are your favorite authors?
I read almost exclusively romance for the same reason I mentioned earlier. I don't really have a patience for sad endings anymore. Some of my favorite romance authors are Helen K. Diamond, who's a local San Diego author. I love Jill Shalvis' book, Kristen Higgins, even though she writes first-person romances primarily. I'm trying to think. Kira Brady is a new paranormal romance author whose work I adore. And I love Jennifer Crusie books. Outside of romance, I have an affinity for stand-up comedians' autobiographies.
Really?
I really love reading the life stories and the collected essays of comedians. And not just stand-up comedians, because I guess I'm a huge fan of David Sedaris. Mm-hmm. And I just love them all, you know, from Tina Fey's Bossy Pants to now I'm drawing a blank. Steve Martin's autobiography is amazing. So
yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people, that Steve Martin's book is really good.
It is. So those are probably the two genres I read in right now.
Okay.
Besides my kids.
And are you still teaching, or are you writing full-time now?
I write full-time. My kids are 9 and 10, and so I do, you know, because I work from home, it's kind of the best of both worlds, because I can be there for them, and they don't have to go to childcare or anything like that, and I can still write full-time.
How do they feel about mom being a writer?
They're pretty proud, especially my 10-year-old daughter. She has requested me to come into her class and teach some lessons on writing and talk about my journey. And it's nice that she's proud.
That's fantastic. So you have written your happy ending.
I have. I think so, but it's evolving, you know? It's great.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's always interesting, people who face the kind of medical adversity that you did. It's always fascinating to see how they respond.
It is. It changes you. You think it won't. It does. It can't help it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always find so much inspiration from the people who take it and turn it into something positive.
Well, thank you.
Congratulations to you on doing such a fantastic job of doing that.
Well, I appreciate that.
So
having me on the show today is wonderful. What a great opportunity to spread the word about romance. Yeah,
we don't have enough romance in our life. Too much like nasty politics and stuff. Let's start loving each other again.
I know. I'm for that. Finding love and keeping love is what everyone is striving for.
Yeah, happy endings.
Happy endings.
Yep, I think that's super important.
Yes.
So, Melissa, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
I really appreciate it, David. Thank you.
And is there anything you want to part with for the people who are listening? Any last words of advice?
My only piece of advice would be to follow your dreams, figure out what they are, and don't discount them. Don't shove them aside, because you only get to live once, and you got to make the most of it. That's what I would say.
This episode of the Intellectual Network is brought to you by HostGator. If you are looking to build a website or an e-commerce site, or are looking to run your own server, HostGator is the best choice for excellent customer service and some of the best hosting packages the internet has to offer. And now, you can save $9.94 off your initial package price and show your support for the intellectual by using the offer code TINHOSTING. That's TIN hosting at checkout. That's TIN hosting for $9.94 off the package price for whatever service you choose. So go to HostGator.com and start building your home on the web today. That's HostGator.com for all your website needs, and use the offer code TINHosting.